Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you, as always, by the 2023 Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is Toyota's brand new all-electric SUV that is designed to go the distance for you and your family. The BZ4X is packed with Toyota's coolest tech, but it still has that trusty SUV feel you know and love. And even though it's electric, it's capable of effortlessly conquering any terrain, whether it's rain, snow, mud, or your friends' questionable post-game recaps or post-game Super Bowl takes. The BZ4X will get you through. This is Canucks Conversation. We are coming to you from the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. Looking for your next meeting space? Contact the Wall Center for all your event needs at sales@wallcenter.com. My name is Dave Gugelli. That is Harmon Dial. Our technical producer is Grady Sass. It was a busy weekend. The Canucks played. I turned 24 years old, and the Chiefs won another Super Bowl. We're going to get some Super Bowl conversation because I think everybody has some Super Bowl takes after that one. But we'll get to it in anyone else. I wanted to get to it off top. We'll get to it in anyone else. How was your weekend?
It was awesome. By the way, I got to say, you're absolutely buzzing. So sharp, so on point. That might be one of the best intros you've had in terms of energy, how sharp you were with the ad reads in a long while. What did you do over the weekend?
What do you mean long while?
You suck at ad reads.
Wow. Guy does DoorDash ad reads for a week, and now he's throwing stones.
I'm kidding.
Now he's throwing stones. No, honestly, I don't know. You know, people were asking me if I felt wiser after turning 24, and it's true. So I can't wait for you to get there. Grady, when do you turn 24? I'm just joking.
About almost 10 years ago.
All right, we got a lot of people in the YouTube live chat here. Good stuff, folks. Good stuff. Jett Woo called up. We've got a lot to get to. Let's recap those weekend games. We'll start in Detroit, where the Vancouver Canucks fell 4-3 in overtime to the Detroit Red Wings. I'll let you get to the game. I just want to say it was funny as hell. That DeBrincat versus Ian Cole fight. What the hell was Alex DeBrincat thinking? And man, twice in the past week, in seven days, this is the second time I can use me going up against Chris Faber as a analogy for something. There was when we had our Patreon, people didn't ask. Chris wanted to do this, and I refused to agree. Chris wanted to, and maybe it'd be different now, maybe, but Chris wanted to do a thing where he would be blindfolded and he would have his right arm tied behind his back and he would have a boxing glove on his left hand. And I would have boxing gloves on both my hands and no blindfold. And we would fight each other, but he could only use his left hand. Keep in mind, he's powerful. Like, his left hand is his dominant hand. So if he caught me once, I was done, was basically the rules of the fight. And, you know, I've never boxed before, so I don't know how good my head movement and all that is, but I refused to do that. Alex DeBrincat thought differently. He decided to go up against Ian Cole, which I think is equally as stupid as the scenario that I just outlined. Drops the gloves with Ian Cole, and it goes about as well as you thought it would have. Our friends at Hockey Fights over there, you go to hockeyfights.com, you can vote on all the fights. Ian Cole winning that one pretty handily, as you would expect.
It was so hilarious. It gave the vibes of like a little kid angry trying to find his dad, or the little brother who's like 5 years younger than his older brother, just having enough and trying to go at him, and the older brother's just toying with him. And you knew, first of all, it was so funny that Cole, you could tell he did not want to fight DeBrincat.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed, but even in scrums, for instance, he's not super physical. I think Ian Cole is just at the point where he's like, I'm too old for this crap.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just here to play hockey. I'm going to play hard between the whistles, but I don't really care for this extracurricular stuff.
I think what really made it feel like the scenario you just outlined, with a dad having to fight with his kids or whatever, and the toddler being angry, was when DeBrincat was doing the little rabbit punches, Cole was way too calm. And I think Wyatt tweeted that out too. Like, Cole just was eating them, and he was like, all right, I'm going to wait for him to tire himself out, and then I'll just lay the hammer down. And that's exactly what happened. And that was my main thing from the Detroit game. But also in the chat here, Karan said DeBrincat lost the fight, but helped his team gain momentum to come back and win it. Now we know Karan is Alex DeBrincat's burner account.
Yeah, well, I was also thinking, what a great trade-off for the Canucks. DeBrincat for Cole, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunate that they blew that 3-1 lead in the third period. I thought outside of that, though, I mean, I think with the weekend in general and outside of the Carolina game, it probably wasn't the Canucks' best hockey. And yet you walk away from this post All-Star break 2-1-1 going up against two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in Carolina and Boston, plus a back-to-back with weird start times in the afternoon. Like, you take that all day. With the Detroit game in particular, I mean, a couple standout performances. Elias Pettersson responding with 3 5-5 points. He was excellent. Philip Hronek as well. 3 points in his return to Detroit. And it's not just the Detroit game. I think since the All-Star break in general, he's looked even more dynamic offensively. I mean, look at the sweet breakaway move he had, looking like a top 6 forward. Loading up for the clapper, Ridley Gregg style on the goal that Höglander tipped, which again, another example of Canucks defensemen, particularly Houston Hronek, doing a great job of shooting for tips and deflections. And then he had a nice pass in the high slot that eventually led to Pettersson's goal off the end boards. If it isn't for Pettersson and Hronek's offensive impact, there's no chance the Canucks even get a point in that Detroit game. I also thought the Miller line was really quiet, and that was a little disappointing for me because you have Pettersson, Suter, and Höglander, and you're thinking, okay, these are two less established wingers. And of course, Höglander scores. Pettersson has the big night. That was the line out of the top 6 that you probably had less confidence in. It was more of an unknown in terms of, we don't really know if this is going to click or not, as opposed to, I think, when you have Miller, Besser, and Lindholm,
3 established players.
That's your top line on paper.
Yeah.
And they were really quiet. That was, I think, a little bit disappointing to see.
Yeah. We'll get to more from that game, and we'll get to more from the weekend split, but we're not going to make him wait any longer because he's waiting in the wings. He's ready to get in here. Jay Rosehill, our pal, is brought to you today by our friends at 4 Winds Brewing, family owned and operated in Delta, home to the 4 Winds Light Lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer, a beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for 4 Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your front door through the online shop at 4windsbrewing.ca. Okay, we've got Jay. Jay is the host of Leafs Morning Take. He's also the host of Department of Discipline, 2 shows within our network. And this is Jay. I think this is the first time we've ever met, but I really wanted to get his opinion, much like we had John Scott on the show like a few weeks ago. I wanted to get Jay on the show to talk about a few things because, Jay, I'm not sure if you've heard, the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the headlines right now.
I noticed there's things going on lately. It's kind of a spicy Monday morning, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And we'll start right there. Obviously, it was the cross-check heard around the hockey world that came at the end of that game between the Ottawa Senators and Toronto Maple Leafs. I think we're going to have a few questions on the whole ordeal, but what's your initial take on what went down there?
Yeah, well, I was watching it live, and I mean, I watched him wind up and take that clapper that was honestly with more effort than anyone did in the hardest shot competition in the All-Star game. It was a clear big FU to the Maple Leafs, and I saw Morgan Rielly go right after him, and I absolutely loved it. But what I wasn't a fan of is the fact that he cross-checked him right in the head. I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room in between doing nothing and cross-checking him in the head, and it's my honest opinion that it wasn't in his intent to go and give him that shot right to the head. Kind of crawled up on him, which can happen when you cross-check. But at the end of the day, it's you got to be in control of your own stick, and he's gonna pay the piper here about it. But as far as the actual response itself to what he did, I was all for it.
You're obviously a former player. You've been in NHL locker rooms. You've played in intense, passionate games. That, of course, anytime you have the Battle of Ontario, it's going to be such an emotional, intense type of atmosphere. If you were an Ottawa Senator and you're in that locker room, what would your thought on Greg loading up for that slap shot would be? Because some people are thinking it's such a heat of the moment thing, and Greg's a player that plays with a chip on his shoulder. And look, if it happens, it happens. Not that, of course, you want it happening regularly, but some people don't have a problem with it. Others say you don't want to cross the line and give the opponents a reason to go after you.
Yeah, I mean, he's fully able to make that call and do that. I got no problem with. You can do whatever you want. You can act like Brad Marchand out there. You can act like Mario Lemieux. You can do whatever you want. It's your career, and you have the ability to act how you want. But if you're going to do things like that, expect a response back. I mean, this game's good. The guys have a lot of pride and honor and integrity within the game and how they feel towards their teammates and the organization that they play for. And if you're going to throw, a big two fingers in the air right at the team that you're playing after an empty netter, right? That's what that is. It's going to elicit a response. It would elicit a response in a beer league hockey game. You go and wind up a huge clapper to finish the game and put the nail in the coffin in that fashion. It's going to piss some people off, especially when you have these high-end athletes that are just, full of passion, intensity, and competitiveness. It's going to piss people off. So he's free to go and do that, but don't be surprised when a guy comes at you and doesn't like it. That's what I'm saying. And if he didn't realize it was going to elicit a response, then, well, obviously he does now, but also, he was a little bit naive being a young guy in the league thinking that that's just going to go off without a hitch.
2 questions. How many games do you think Rielly will get suspended? How many games do you think he should get suspended?
I think he's going to get 5 or 6. I can't decide if they're going to go over the 5. I think it's going to be 5, being as it's an in-person. I think he should get I think he should get 2 for it. I think it sends the message. I don't think he's a guy that's out there that does that all the time, that tries to do it. I think if you look at it from the one angle, he clearly goes right at his shoulder, bounces right off his shoulder and slides up into his head. Once he realizes he's up in that danger zone, he completely lets go of his stick. That doesn't mean he's not responsible for it. You're responsible for what happens with your stick, whether that was your intention or not. And you go and give a guy a cross check higher on the shoulder, there's a chance it's going to come up and be around the guy's head. So he should pay the piper to a degree. But I mean, a 5-6 game suspension for that, when I just don't see the consistency in the suspensions, where you see other guys doing, more vicious things that, I mean, Leafland, obviously right now, Leafs Nation is pulling up all kinds of incidents against the Leafs that got 0 games that were much more vicious. So the consistency is never there. And it's always a coin flip on, who's going to be right with the suspensions. But I have a feeling he's going to get 5 or 6. And I just think that's too much.
You mentioned inconsistency from the league. How hard is it? You and Ryan Pinder every Thursday do an episode called Department of Discipline. That show, you and Pinder. How hard is it to do a show about suspensions when you really have no idea what the NHL is going to do on any given day? Because we just saw Zadorov, and we'll ask you about that, but Zadorov gets 2 games as well. How's that show been so far, though?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, that show touches on everything. Obviously, under the Hockey Fights label, they've got the fighting side of things that we touch on, but it's really anything cultural, anything that's going on in the game. We've touched on the 2018 World Juniors saga, the Milan Lucic stuff, the suspensions that are going on. And, whenever this stuff happens, it's more things to talk about, and there doesn't seem to be any shortage of that this year. But yeah, you break down what happened, you compare it to other incidents, other players, compare it on what franchise this is, what the history is, what you think their reputation is. And it's not an easy job for George Parros. I don't claim that for a second. I think if I was doing that job, I do not think I would be perfect at it, and there'd be a lot of pissed off people if I was calling the shots. But I think one thing that you really got to try to nail down in that situation is being consistent. And so far, that's proven to be difficult.
What do you think Rielly's saying in the appeal process? Like, what does the appeal process actually look like for a player going in person? Obviously, it's tomorrow, right? Tuesday, Rielly's going. What does the appeal process look like?
Yeah, I haven't been through it personally, but I imagine you're going to sit down, and I don't know how formal it's going to be or how much time they have to actually converse, as people. But I imagine Rielly will be able to say his piece as far as, look, this was a clearly unsportsmanlike thing. I know it's not in the rule book, but George Parros, as much as anyone, understands that type of thing, and that's going to elicit a response. I was going up to him to give him a shot and stand up for my team and for my own pride and where I am. And he's going to have to show that, yeah, look, I went at his shoulder, it bounced up and hit. You can see I let go with my one hand first and then dropped my stick entirely when I realized, oh, geez, I got him up in that dangerous area. And he can plead his case that way. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to take responsibility and say, I know I screwed up. I know I'm going to get suspended for this. And, there's a bunch of other things I could have done that wouldn't warrant a suspension, that would have sent the same message. And he's going to have to own that. And at the end of the day, if that together, changes the NHL's decision on what their number of games is going to be. I can't imagine it is. I imagine they have it in their mind already. But, anytime you get that in-person hearing, it's kind of nice. You get to go plead your case. But on the other hand, it never turns out well for the player when they have to go in and do a face-to-face.
On Saturday, Nikita Zadorov stepped up on the blue line, hit Lucas Raymond, got the 5-minute major, tossed from the game, ultimately suspended for 2 games. What did you think of the hit and the suspension? Was it fair?
Yeah, like the hit, it's he's cutting across on his edge backwards, kind of one of those hits that defensemen type to make, and usually it's up against the glass. This one happens to be open ice. And it's just, he's on his trail leg with his heel leading. So to have any agility at that point in time, at that speed, it's difficult to line the guy up perfectly. But he clips his head, and that's the biggest problem, right? And of course, Raymond has the theatrics after of sliding on his knees and arcing his back and then sliding and then flopping face first. And, oh, look at everyone, make sure the spotlight's on me for this. And that's fine. It's his MO. But when you're hitting guys today's day and age, where the NHL stands on it. They want to play hockey without hitting players' heads. So if you're going to go hit a guy, you got to get their full body. You got to get the trunk and the main mass of his body, and you can't just clip his chin or his head. I mean, that is how you get concussions. That is what they're trying to pull back on. So I understand the league needing to do something about it. The game amount, I expected. It is what it is. And, every time there's a suspension like that, there's a few here in the last week, and it seems like there's 2 common themes. One is the guy that gets hit always seems to look like he doesn't even realize they're playing body contact hockey, like complete head up his backside, going through the middle, completely in a vulnerable position that he's put himself in. No onus to protect himself at all. And then the person that's hitting them is not able to get the full body, and they clip a head and clip a face or clip their chin. And that's just an immediate reaction from the league is going to be to suspend that player, whether that original player put himself in a vulnerable spot or not. They don't seem to care at all. They want to knock down the headshots and make that a suspendable offense. And right now in the NHL, it's a full contact sport that you're not allowed to touch the guy's head on. So until that changes, and it's not going to change, we're going to have these arguments and these incidents where guys are getting suspended for what some people consider a clean hit, or what used to be a clean hit, or a guy didn't protect himself, or it's the guy that got hit's fault for leading with his head, and all these different things. But as long as you're playing hit hockey where you can't hit the guy's head, you're going to run into these problems all the time.
How hard do you think that is then for like a guy like Zadorov, who, he plays kind of on that edge? It's a fine line, obviously, of playing very physical, being a larger than life human being with Zadorov. Like, how hard is it now in kind of the modern era NHL where everything you just outlined is present in the game?
It's extremely hard. I mean, the game is so fast, it would blow your mind. And to take a video and then take the 3rd or 4th angle of it and break it down in super slow-mo and kind of peel the layers back in there. See right there, the first point of contact was his head. Like, do you have any idea how impossible that is to navigate during the course of an NHL shift where 2 bodies are colliding? You're going to make a body check. And I really like Zadorov. I was excited for you guys when you got him. I think he's got a lot of upside, and I love players that play with that jam and that want to go take the body. But, it's just unfortunate to me that the more the NHL comes down on these guys' hits and the way they're suspending them for these body checks, it seems like the more that other players are putting themselves in vulnerable positions, assuming that they're not allowed to get hit anymore. And it's just compounding on itself with guys turning their back to the guy that's hitting them, leading with their head, looking behind them, going through the middle, crazy things like that, where you're just asking for injuries. So it would just be nice if guys, protected themselves a little bit more and got their shoulder up and understood when they're in dangerous areas and got up on their edge and protected themselves from these body checks. And I think a lot of it would go away. But until then, the onus is going to be on the guy hitting them. And, it's tough because guys want to lay body checks and be physical, and it's a big part of the game. But more and more players I see are scared to do it because you know, they don't know if the guy's going to turn at the last second or lead with his head, and you're going to catch a piece of his chin, and then, you know, you lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and hurt your team, and you're suspended. And now you got a reputation, and it's on your you know, your permanent record, so to speak. It's difficult position to be in for those physical players.
Jay, good stuff. Thanks so much for taking the time today, and we'll do it again soon.
You bet, guys. Appreciate it.
And that was Jay Rosehill. You can check him out, like I said earlier, on the Department of Discipline podcast. And, of course, Leafs Morning Take with our pal Nick Alberga over on Leafs Nation. I know all the Canucks fans want to go watch a Leafs show, but they have good stuff. They've had Bruce on numerous times. Bruce Boudreau, of course. They've had him on before, and they do a really good show. Even if you're not a Leafs fan, they do a good show. Harman, let's continue before we get to anyone else in our few more ads that we have to get through. Let's continue talking about the Canucks weekend games. Anything else you wanted to say about Detroit? Because I think Jay put it pretty well with the Zadorov suspension. Again, I wasn't really expecting him to get suspended, but you know, you look at the hit. It's a hard one to like dissect, because it's kind of like Jay said, when you look at it for like, you know, a bunch of different angles, then you start to really peel into it. And I don't know, it wasn't a good hit. It wasn't a good hit, but also, you know, the player returned, and I know a lot of people say, and I agree with them to some extent, that like a player being injured shouldn't impact in a suspension. But in my opinion, Zadorov missed most of that game because he got thrown out early in the second period. You know, he gets there's the 5-minute penalty, and then I didn't know if it should have been more, definitely not more than a game, I didn't think. But I also thought it would have just been a fine based on the NHL's history. And I tweeted this out, and I had to defend this, right? Like I had to defend this on Twitter, because I realized how it went out when I tweeted it out, how people read it, and they probably just took it the same way. I'm looking at it through the lens of what the NHL's track record, the NHL Department of Player Safety, what I think they would hand out. I thought it would be either a game or a fine. That's all I thought. But what do I think it should be? Okay, I don't think that hit should be in the NHL. Like, it shouldn't. You shouldn't be hitting guys in the head like that. And you should throw the book at those players. But the NHL hasn't. The NHL has no real standard that they go to. And again, go listen to the episode we had with John Scott. He talks about this guy who played in the league. Jay played in the league as well. There's no standard that the players know of, and really that we know of either. So I was surprised that it was 2 games.
I didn't have a problem with it personally. I thought, again, I don't think Zadorov had any malicious intent, and there's, of course, a massive size discrepancy between Zadorov and Raymond. He's shown that he's, I think, a pretty clean player, and he just, when you try and make explosive open ice hits, on occasion you're going to mistime it, and that's what happened here. I didn't have a problem with the suspension. I thought it was fair.
I think you need to, and this is going to come across as maybe a little crazy based on what I just said. I think you need to suspend players for more than what Zadorov got suspended. Like, I think if I ran the NHL Department of Player Safety,
I don't know where you're going with this, Quad.
I don't know either, but I'm talking it through. Ty David in the chat said the NHL does need to reduce hits to the head because of the CTE risks. Okay. It's such a complicated conversation, and there's no silver bullet. But I am for players not getting hit in the head. And it's a physical game. I get that. It's a physical game, but you have to do something about any hit to the head. And I go back to what we said with John Scott like 3 weeks ago when we had him on the show, or however long ago that was. I keep bringing it up. But what he suggested, an NHL enforcer, this isn't some nerd behind a computer like me. It's John Scott, a guy who fought and played in the NHL, saying, if you really want to get rid of these hits, you need to start suspending guys way overboard, like you did with clutching and grabbing, like you did with hooking when they brought all those rules in the mid-2000s. If that's what you want to do, you have to throw the book at these guys, and it needs to be very aggressive until this is out of everybody's game, until this is out of the game of hockey. That's what you need to start doing if you really want to make some sort of difference in the league, and you want to make it so that these hits aren't happening. If I was in charge of player safety, first of all, I'd give Rielly like 7 games. Zadorov, I would have given like 3 or 4 games, because any hit to the head should be an automatic 3, I think. But then you also, now I come into the conversation, and I was ripping Nola Chari for skating like a Timbit hockey player through the neutral zone last week and getting hit by Brendan Dillon. I was criticizing that. So it's hard to, like, there's no silver bullet, right? But like, can you start suspending guys for skating with their heads down? I think so. If I'm in charge of player safety,
you've taken like every stance in different points here. I'm trying to wrap my head around the point you're making, but what you were
summarize, I have no point, but I have a lot of thoughts.
Sounds like a typical quads take.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, yeah, it's easy to say. First of all, I think we all agree nobody wants to see headshots, but if you also go in and say we're gonna throw the book and go excessive to get it out of the game, yeah, you're gonna get it out of the game, but are you gonna completely lose the physical element? Because it's not as if when you're playing, like Zadorov, for instance, the way that hit happens, and given how fast the game is, most of these guys are not headhunting.
Yeah. No, nobody's doing that. That's the thing. Nobody's doing that in this day and age.
So it's like if they create such an excessive punishment for these headshots, guys are just going to go, okay, I can't throw any hits.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's really hard fine line to balance, because let's say you go at Zadorov harder, well, then Zadorov might just not be a physical player, and then you might not get all those clean hits.
And you're also going to lose that player type, which is something I don't think is good for the game.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about, like, that was the last question I asked to Jay, right? Was how hard is it for a guy like Zadorov who plays physical to kind of walk that fine line? Hell, if I was Department of Player Safety head, or 2 minutes ago, the take I had, if those were the rules, then it's a hell of a lot harder for Nikita Zadorov to even make a living in the league, right? And look, Zadorov can skate, he can do all these other things. I'm not trying to say he's a one-dimensional player or anything, but like, it's hard. It's a hard conversation to kind of navigate, because there's a lot of different angles taken into consideration. Like, I think everybody can agree, okay, we don't want players suffering from CTE. We don't want players getting smoked in the head. But then, there's also the aspect of, okay, like, these guys do know what they're signing up for to some extent, right? Like, they know it's a physical sport that they're playing, and they're compensated well for it. There's so many different angles that you look at. And it's just, yeah, I guess I don't have a silver bullet answer.
Yeah, I think to summarize, I had no problem with, I thought 2 games was a fair suspension for Zadorov.
Matt Folger in the YouTube live chat. Quad makes all the points and no point. Very zen. Very zen. I like that. That's all.
Seriously, on one hand, you're like,
throw the book at him.
Throw the book at him, but then you led with,
keep your head up, Nola.
I thought it was gonna be a fine or 1 game. Yeah, I don't know where you're going with it, Quads, but I get what you're saying. Like, it is a complex conversation. That's why, look, it's easy to make the Department of Player Safety a punching bag. It's easy to make them a joke, and yeah, they don't really have a standard of consistency. But also, every hit is different.
Mm-hmm.
Every incident has, like, it's impossible to create perfect comparables from hit to hit, from incident to incident. Like, these aren't contract comparables where they're numbers and easy to compare.
Yeah.
There's so many different factors you have to consider. And I'll say this, I don't care who you put in charge of that department. Nobody, let me put it this way. It's the same way we have conversations about officiating. Nobody's going to give you credit for a fair suspension. You're only going to get ripped if somebody thinks you got it wrong. And when you are enforcing a punishment, you're always going to piss one side off.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And
so I think it's an almost impossible job for people to look at and go, they're doing a good job.
Yeah. And people don't often say that about George Peros.
Yes.
Tough job. It's a tough job. Like, yeah, that is tough. Okay. Anything else on the Detroit game before we move to Washington?
Nope.
Okay. Let's get to Washington. This one, the Canucks won off, what's that guy's name? Connor McMichael?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing with the whole Bobby McMahon. Who the hell is Connor? No, I'm just kidding. I know who Connor McMichael is. I do know who Connor McMichael is. And JT Miller found out who Connor McMichael was when he sent him a tape-to-tape pass in the dying seconds of overtime. Man, you feel for a young player like McMichael. And I saw reports out of Washington that a lot of the Capitals players were kind of going up to him and, giving him pats after the game and just saying, like, hey, man, like, shake it off. You're going to make mistakes in your NHL career. Really tough one for a young player who, he's trusted to play in overtime. And yeah, at 23 years old, that is a very, very tough mistake to make. Like I said, passing the puck tape to JT Miller in front of the Capitals net, and he made no mistake. Although I should say the Capitals choosing not to put Clay Stevenson in net. Did they have it coming? Maybe.
Well, okay, so a few thoughts. First, going into it, the first period was so interesting to me because the Canucks only had 2 shots in 11 through the first 11 minutes. Felt like Washington was doing a really good job of moving the pocket of the defensive zone with a level of quickness and breaking Vancouver's forecheck that I haven't seen from teams for most of the season. Vancouver's forecheck most nights feels like a cheat code in terms of how it can force turnovers, how they create these extended cycle shifts. And for the first 10, 11 minutes, they were breaking it with ease. And I'm thinking, oh boy, if the Caps can do this consistently, and they're not even that good of a team, then this could be a tough night, especially since, the Capitals, sorry, my memory is so fuzzy. They opened the scoring, right?
The Capitals? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
Just
sure.
wanted to
The
double
Canucks
check.
weren't on the power play, though.
I
So
feel
it
like
bucked the trend because that was the Canucks passed 3 games prior to the one against Capitals. They gave up a shorthanded goal to open the game.
There were so many games over the weekend, especially with the Super Bowl. I'm like, I'm 95% sure, but I also don't want to sound like an idiot in case I was wrong there.
Who cares?
But yeah, so I was watching that, and then the Canucks have this deficit, and I'm thinking, oh, is this going to be a tough night for them to generate offense? And then it's the third line getting them back into the game again. Your boy Noah Juleson with the beautiful stretch pass to sort of change the momentum there. And after that, it just felt like a back and forth game where both sides would have these stretches where they'd control possession in the offensive end, where they'd apply a lot of pressure, because the Canucks in the second period came out pretty strong, I thought. But then the end of the second, man, Thatcher Demko was pretty unbelievable. The Caps had power play late there where Demko made 2-3 great saves. He robbed Protas at towards the end there, robbed Nick Jensen in the dying seconds as well, was unbelievable in OT. Thatcher Demko deserves a lot of credit. I think a lot of times we're so used to seeing what good goaltending looks like that we almost take that for granted. He deserves a lot of credit. I also thought that second period was the first time we started to see the Miller, Lindholm, Besser line start generating looks, because up until that point, you were really thinking, there's not nearly enough here for 3 guys that are talented offensively. They just weren't creating much of anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a trend that we've kind of seen for a bit now. And look, with that line being recently constructed, you're looking to get a little bit more. I have a lot on Noah Juleson, but I think I'm going to save it for anyone else. So let's keep breaking down this game. I thought the first star of the game was Thatcher Demko, who makes 31 saves on, 33 shots he faced? Yeah, 33 shots. 31 saves for Thatcher Demko, a 939 save percentage in that game. On the season, he's up to a 919. We were starting to see it dip a little bit, and we were seeing the kind of ebbs and flows, but I thought he's been phenomenal, and I thought the defensive environment in front of him has started to slip a little bit, especially compared to what it was in October. So Thatcher Demko staying right there in the Vezina conversation, and that was a marquee performance for him on Sunday with the Canucks. I thought it was a really, really solid game from him. I thought he really took over the game in the second period and then never really looked back in the third period. I thought he was phenomenal again. And yet, even in overtime, like if you recall, Washington had a few chances to ice the game in overtime, and Demko stood tall, and it was really good. We didn't even talk about the cross check in Saturday. Wallman, that vicious cross check from Quinn Hughes that led to the penalty shot, and then Wallman scores and then hits the gritty on the Canucks.
Yeah. I mean, he's done that quite a few times. Look,
Someone's got to Ridley Gregg that guy, I'll tell you that much.
No, man. I love that celebration. To be honest, I've loved it ever since I saw him do it the first time. It's funny. I was watching the game with one of my couple of my friends, and they're Canucks fans. They're like, I hate the gritty. I'm like, you're just saying that because he scored on you. It's pretty cool. If you're a Red Wings fan, you'd be like, man, that's dope. Yeah. He's had 3 or 4 OT winners this year already. It's pretty nuts.
That is pretty remarkable. So I saw the takes on Twitter. I know this show goes live on Facebook. I know our Facebook crowd is going to be saying, first of all, what the hell's the gritty? I'll help you because I had to Google this too. It's when they the dance move, swing the arms in front. All the kids are doing it these days. But was it what's the guy's name? Zach Wilson, the Jets quarterback. He does it a lot. The gritty. It's a dance move, and Jake Wallman did it, and people were asking, okay, next time these two teams face, which is Thursday at Rogers Arena, retribution, Ridley Gregg.
Come on.
Noah Juleson, baby. Noah Juleson will take care of the trash. You know what Noah Juleson will do? Noah, trash needs to be taken out. Boom, takes out the trash. Noah Juleson.
I agree with your Juleson take, but I am not here for Jake Wallman slander. He's my boy.
Honestly, I don't. First of all, I don't think the Canucks are going to go after him. Second
They're
of all,
not.
I don't think they should, or like, I don't think this should be a conversation.
Were people even talking about this?
Yes, they were. They were.
They were?
Dude,
Seriously?
You got to spend more time on Facebook, buddy.
I don't think that's a solution.
That's fair.
No, you don't.
Alex Ovechkin, 5 straight games with a goal. He's up to 13 on the season. Look, it was really looking like, oh, well, the whole Washington Capitals organization is structured around getting him that record, and it really looked like with the start to his season that he wasn't going to get it. So to find out that he had scored his 5th goal in as many games and he's up to 13 on the year, I'm like, all right, he's got a chance. What's he, 60 away now? You don't have to Google it. It's okay. Doesn't matter. He's something like 60.
It's funny because he still only has 13 goals on the year, I believe.
Yeah, I just said that.
Oh, my bad. I didn't catch
I
that.
said it like twice, but it's okay. 13 goals on the year. You know,
It was fluky goal too.
I know.
He's washed. He's so washed.
so you don't think he's
man.
getting the record, eh?
Look, that entire organization is dedicated to making it happen.
As they should.
And I mean, look, if there are enough empty nets and they just keep feeding him low percentage shots on the one timer, it might happen. I haven't done the math or really thought about it to conclude whether he can do it or not. But just as a player, he is so washed. He doesn't move. I don't know if you noticed, but he'll just like be parked in one spot. He doesn't back check. He doesn't move his feet.
You're describing Andrei Kuzmenko.
Except even less mobile.
Okay, so
Right?
Gretzky's goal record is 894 and Ovechkin's at 835. I don't think he gets it.
I don't think he gets it.
I don't think he gets it. He scored 42 goals last season, Harm. In 73 games. Did he just fall off a cliff?
He's just slow. If you remember Ovechkin in his prime, think about how explosive he was as a skater
That's true.
and how physical he was. But now he can't move. That's the problem is. And the power play too, his one-timer isn't really a threat from that left circle anymore because everybody knows he's just parking in that circle. It's an easy shot to get in the shooting lane of.
Yeah.
It's so low percentage.
It used to work all the
The
time.
Caps have one of the worst power plays in the league, and it hasn't been an elite power play in a really long time.
You know what they should do? I guess he wants to get it as a Cap. Never mind. I would say Canucks should trade for him. Throw him on the power play. You're giving me that look. Why do you give me that look? I'm all vibes, baby. Get him some guys who can pass him the puck. Ovechkin's gonna get his goals.
I'm sure Rick Tocchet will love Alex Ovechkin after having dealt with Andrei Kuzmenko.
Well, that's one of the things. Like, he doesn't have Nick Backstrom anymore.
Yeah, there you go.
Kuznetsov has fallen off.
Clay
Nope.
Stevenson's in the AHL.
So it's really only John Carlson, Anthony Mantha. Like, he doesn't
Dylan
have a lot
Strome.
of talent around him to prop him up. And where did he make his hay most of his career? In that spot on the power play. So if you can't feed him the puck, how is he supposed to hammer it home?
This is so
gotta
rock
get in-
star.
Yeah.
78
brain
games in 2013-14, minus 35 plus minus, and he scored 51 goals. That rocks. That's the funniest stat I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Wow, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, maybe not a Rick Tocchet type player. Moving on. Did you have anything else on the Washington game?
Hoglander again. What a beauty
Oh, we
move.
didn't even talk about that. Hoglander was so good. I'll talk about Juleson and anyone else. Don't worry, folks. We're going to get to the Noah Juleson stuff. But Nils Hoglander, yes. Nils Hoglander playing in the top 6 for 2 games, scoring in 2 games. He looks phenomenal next to Elias Pettersson right now.
The key too is, do you remember under Bruce, not last season, but the year before when you took over midseason, occasionally, I believe you'd see Bruce give Pettersson, Hoglander a look. They'd create chances. And briefly, there was a really small stretch where it was Pettersson, Podkolzin, and Hoglander. And you remember for like a game or two, they were buzzing, creating so many chances.
I do remember this.
But neither of them could finish.
Yep.
Right. And that was Hoglander's big problem was during the height of his offensive struggles under Boudreau, he couldn't bury and capitalize on his opportunities. It felt like he'd get 1 or 2 grade A chances a game. The confidence just wasn't there. I remember having a conversation with him in, I think it was around February of 2022 in New York, a one-on-one interview where he said, yeah, my confidence isn't really there right now. Boy, it's there now. When you look at his finishing, it's night and day compared to a couple of years ago. And that's what you need if you're going to be in a top 6 role, right? Because we know Höglander's speed, his tenacity in the forecheck, how he forces turnovers is an asset. But the difference between being able to excel doing that in a bottom 6 role versus in a top 6 role is, can you finish?
Yep.
And I think, like, not that this is a comparable for Höglander by any stretch of the imagination, but think about a guy like Zach Hyman, who for a long time with the Leafs was basically Ilya Mikheyev when Mikheyev was actually disruptive and really fast, where it's like Hyman was tenacious, ferocious, but the guy couldn't finish if you gave him a tap in on the back door. Whereas now the reason he's this offensive weapon next to, for a long time, Matthews and now McDavid, is he learned how to finish around the net.
I wonder what Höglander's ceiling is. I'm starting to ask myself that, because this season, like, he's on pace for 25 goals now on the season. If he pots 25 goals, like, you're penciling him in as a top 6 forward for next season, right?
Yes, but the one thing you have to keep in mind is scoring 25 goals without any power play time is basically unheard of. And that's where you have to remember that he is shooting 23%, which, if you remember, Andrei Kuzmenko was shooting 27%. We know what if that drops off, it can have a pretty big impact. And again, that's not a knock on Höglander. You also have to remember he's averaging 11 minutes a night this year.
Yep.
He barely plays. So for him to have already scored 16 goals, players can't do that with that limited opportunity year in, year out. His minutes are going to have to go up for him to be a consistent 20 to 25 goals.
You've got to get him on the power play. Like, you've got to get him some consistent power play minutes. You have to. And hey, PP2's been getting a lot of time lately.
Yeah, I think Höglander's, I see him being a middle 6 play driving winger.
Connor Garland light. We've thrown it out many times. Okay, let's get to a few words from our sponsors, and then we'll get to anyone else. Man, I've been cooking something, and I'm ready to deliver it. But first, I'm going to tell you about 2 of our sponsors. First is HSBC World Rugby Sevens. Western Canada's largest sporting event this year is the 9th time the event will visit Vancouver as part of the World Rugby Sevens series. From February 23rd to 25th, BC Place is going to be the place to be. So grab your friends and grab your best costume and head on down. Tickets are on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $40 per day. And if you want to go, we've got a 4-pack of tickets for the entire weekend to give away. Text hashtag sevens, that's SEVENS, to 778-402-9680 for your chance to win. We will be giving away a 4-pack each week until the event. Text hashtag sevens to 778-402-9680. And our next sponsor here. Were you about to jump in? You don't have to yet. Not yet. One more. Wendy's. And the Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool game, which I am looking to win again, folks. I tell you what, I got my Baconator the other day. Delicious. Off my winnings of I won the game a couple weeks ago. I got my winnings and I went on down to Wendy's. And you should do the same. But if you don't have time to go to Wendy's, you should go to dailyfaceoffsurvivor.com, because Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and the Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool game. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat, along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play the Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool fantasy game to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Anyone else? I'm cooking. Go ahead.
It's time for Anyone Else, presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat. And it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms apply. Cook quads.
All right. I got my drink of water. I was thinking about this in the shower, and I told you I was going to deliver this to you. This take. I've always heard great philosophers, scientists, great thinkers throughout history say things like the world wasn't yet ready for the truth, or they weren't yet ready for what I had to say. And I never really understood what that really meant until I tweeted about Noah Juulsen on Saturday. And I tweeted out that he's been the Canucks' 3rd best defenseman this season. And I was met with vitriol. I was met with anger. I was met with people questioning my integrity. Someone asking if I was related to the Aquilinis. lot of different responses, but most of them being, this is a crazy take. You're wrong. 24 hours later, Noah Juulsen makes a stretch pass to Connor Garland. My entire timeline is filled with Noah Juulsen praise. And then people coming back because, yeah, I quote tweeted it, Harm. And I tweeted out again and reminded everybody what I said about Noah Juulsen. I reminded everybody. And guess what, Harm? I was not met 24 hours. 24 hours. Didn't take a week. Didn't take years like the other great philosophers and I. Didn't take very long. People were completely on board 24 hours later with the take that Noah Juulsen's outplayed. This is the take. Yes, and I admitted it. I forgot Carson Soucy existed. So, hey, that's on me. That's on me. I admitted it. I forgot Carson Soucy existed. Sorry, Carson. I forgot he existed. Hasn't played much, okay? Hasn't played much. Still recovering from a broken knuckle. No fault of his own. Get well soon, Carson. But I threw out the take, and I dumbed it down for everybody, too. My take is that for the past 10, 15 games, and these games matter a lot, past 10, 15 games, Noah Juulsen, in terms of improvement, has been better than, and not in terms of improvement, just as a whole, past 10 to 15 games, and I don't think people are talking about it enough. Noah Juulsen has been better than Ian Cole, he's been better than Nikita Zadorov, and he's been better than Tyler Myers over the past 10 to 15 games.
Yeah, I think that's fair, where you probably got that criticism is because you said he's been the third best defenseman this season, which implies he's been, let's forget about the Soucy thing. Obviously.
Sure.
Yep. Forgot about that. Yep. But where you'd lose me, for example, is if you're saying he's been better than Cole, Myers, Zadorov for the entire season.
Well, okay. So let's say we start our season when Noah Juulsen started to turn his game around. Let's just say that.
But that's cherry picking.
That is cherry picking because Noah Juulsen was dog water to start the season, but he improved his game.
Okay, let me ask it this way.
Let's
right now, forget about this 10 to 15 game stretch where he's been really, really good. If you were to play a playoff series a month from now, do you think he's their fourth best defenseman behind Hughes, Hronek, and Soucy?
A playoff series right now? Yes.
A month from now.
Yes.
I'm saying
a month from now. Yeah. I do.
Okay, that's where I would disagree.
I still think he's there. I think that this is a player who has really, really simplified his game. He's starting to do, and again, this is recency bias. I think Tyler Myers is getting to that territory where we saw him at the start of the year where you were like, oh my goodness, this guy is unplayable. You can't play him right now. I think Tyler Myers has really slipped up lately. So sure, it might be recency bias, but I think Juulsen has really cleaned up his game. He's starting to make those, like his decision making with the puck harm has improved so much. His rush defending has improved a lot. There was a sequence on the weekend where Tyler Myers got pushed wide, and Tyler Myers is playing like he's 5'3" and gets pushed off the puck and gives up the inside lane. And then Juulsen in the same game starts leaning down on the guy and defended it so perfectly and so much better than Myers did. And I think that was where it started to kind of click for me, was that, okay, this guy's actually, like, all of the criticisms I had of Noah Juulsen at the start of the year, all of them are gone.
Fully agree. And this is what frustrates me sometimes, because I also on Saturday in the Detroit game before the beautiful stretch pass against Washington tweeted out about
before the simpletons jumped on board with me. Go on.
How remarkable it's been to see Juulsen's transformation. And I was prepared to come in today and sing Juulsen's praises.
I did enough.
Because, of course, at the start of the season, I was wrong about his NHL potential.
Likewise.
But then you come in with some scorching hot take, and I have to take the opposite stance. Like, can't I just get away with saying nice things about Juulsen? But now I have to disagree with you, because while you're bang on about the improvement he's made, the thing you have to keep in mind is he's averaging 14 minutes a night.
Yeah, he is playing sheltered.
He plays against bottom competition. Whereas you look at somebody like Tyler Myers, and yeah, we saw him get walked pretty egregiously in that Detroit game. But
a lot of errors with the puck too in the past 10 games.
Yes, but he's also consistently playing 19, 20 plus minutes, playing top 6 competition. How many times do you see around the NHL a bottom pair defenseman, when they have to elevate up the lineup, you start to see
the warts in their game,
more mistakes?
For sure.
So you have to keep that in mind. I mean, Travis Dermott is a great example of this in Toronto, because he would crush it in a bottom pair role. Amazing analytics, looked awesome by the eye. People are like, watch this guy move the puck. He is good enough defensively. He's dynamic, excellent transporting it up the ice, defends a rush aggressively. He should be playing higher up the lineup than Ron Hainsey, who is struggling in a top pair role with Morgan Rielly. The problem is as soon as you would elevate Dermott higher than that, he'd start to make a bunch of mistakes with the puck. He would get exposed defensively. Yep. That's where you have to make the contacts, and that's where I would make the case that even though Tyler Myers has made loud mistakes this year, that he's a better player than Noah Juulsen.
What happened to Jake Gardiner?
He, I think, ran into a bunch of injuries when he signed with Carolina.
Damn, because I looked it up because you brought up Dermott, and the same thing always happened with Jake Gardiner in Toronto, right? Where it was he's fine in the third pair role, and then
he played top 4 minutes.
Yeah, but then Leafs fans ran him out of town because he sucked in top 4 minutes. Is my point.
He didn't suck. He was, he'd make the loud mistakes like Myers, but he was actually really good in a lot of other areas. So he was a very polarizing player. I think he was a good top 4 defenseman during his time in Toronto.
What the hell happened to him? He hasn't played a season since 2021.
Got hurt.
With what? Is he done?
I can't remember if the Canes bought him out eventually in that he was cleared to play, but then his contract was so bad. But
he's only 33. Like that sucks.
He's
unsigned. He's unsigned.
He fell off a cliff after signing that contract.
Damn, that's sad. That's really sad. All right. Well, yeah, you're look, you bring up competition with Noah Juulsen. I'm just saying I like to see him get that shot. And I'm gonna go a step further and say that when this blue line is fully healthy, you're doing your load management thing with Ian Cole. We've already seen Noah Juulsen play in the lineup ahead of Ian Cole, right?
Yep.
I think you put Tyler Myers in that same conversation. I think you put Zadorov in that same conversation.
Yeah.
Where Juulsen deserves a spot in the lineup over those guys right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm here for that take. I just would not make the case that he's the third or fourth best defenseman on this team overall. And I'll also say I don't think he, put it this way, I don't think he should be in a cup contenders top 4. Which is basically what you would be arguing. If you're saying he's the fourth best defenseman, you're saying he should be.
I don't think Tyler Myers or Ian Cole or Nikita Zadorov are a contenders top 4.
True, but I also think Juulsen is less established playing higher up the lineup than all of those guys.
Sure.
Other than Zadorov, because he's typically been a third pair guy as well.
Sure. But I'm just telling you right now, the way I look at it is that Juulsen is your fourth best defenseman. Great for Noah Juulsen, not great for the Canucks. I think this brings us to the conversation of they need to go out and get a top 4 defenseman.
Yes, but at what cost?
I also don't know if they have to do that because I think Soucy was playing well enough that you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Because your depth is pushing you, because Noah Juulsen being, lights out best player in the league, him playing the way he is going to elevate the competition in the defense group, because we just brought up the idea of load management and what does your best lineup look like when everybody's healthy. Carson Soucy's in there. Carson Soucy's not in this conversation. Carson Soucy is the clear number 3 when healthy. But Ian Cole, Tyler Myers, Nikita Zadorov, you have some options. And Noah Juulsen, of course. You have some options because of how well Juulsen's playing. It's not a lock that all of those guys are going to play. And theoretically, you would think that with a fully healthy blue line, all of those guys would be elevating their game so as to stay in the lineup, especially come playoff time.
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, sure, in a perfect world, would you like to add somebody like a Chris Tanev to solidify your second pair so that Myers isn't playing as many minutes and tougher matchups? Yes, 100%, but at what cost, right? That's a problem. Are you going to go out and pay a second round pick and another prospect to bring in a defenseman, especially because there aren't a lot of, I think, attractive options out there, to be totally honest. Not to mention, if they are making an upgrade on the blue line, I wouldn't mind making just a cheap depth one so that right now, for instance, Mark Friedman was in the lineup. He's their 8th defenseman. Friedman took the penalty, I think it was. Yep. And I don't think looked sharp overall. Plus the fact that he sat out for that long tells you that the coaching staff probably isn't the biggest fan or the most confident in his game. Would you like to add another 7-8 D-man just to be the extra guy? That I think makes sense, because if you go down multiple defensemen in through a playoff run. Put it this way, if Mark Friedman's in the lineup, I think Rick Tocchet doesn't have confidence, and it's a case of, oh boy, we're going to have to very carefully play him like 12 minutes a night and extremely sheltered. And every time this guy's trapped for an icing, we're half panicking. It's not an ideal spot to be in. So adding another depth piece, I'd be on board for, but that doesn't mean that player would be in the top 6 when everybody's healthy.
I hijacked anyone else, so I want to get at least one listener one in. But Jett Woo's been called up. Jett Woo is with the team in Chicago now. Canucks play the Blackhawks tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if he got his NHL debut. Like, it's the first time he's ever been called up in his career. You would think he would be getting a chance to play. Don't know if another defenseman's coming out or if they're just saying, okay, we really didn't like Mark Friedman's game. Chicago's barely an NHL team. Let's get Jett Woo a chance to get into some NHL games.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure because given Chicago, you could easily make the case that give Woo a shot. See where he slots relative to an option like Mark Friedman. But on the other hand, Canucks are in a race for, forget the division, for the conference. President's Trophy, I do not care at all.
The owner does. I do.
I don't care about the President's Trophy at all. It's meaningless to me.
Wow, that's horrible. There's 2 banners up there that say President's Trophy. It's so cool. Okay, go on.
Give me a cup banner.
Sorry, go on. Conference, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, because the conference then you play the second wildcard team, which is, I think there are 7 good teams in the Western Conference. I think the 8th team, I don't believe in them, whether that's going to be a Calgary, whether that's going to be a St. Louis.
Yep.
Whoever else is in the mix.
But if you win the President's Trophy, you've got home ice advantage for the cup final.
I mean, yeah.
And that matters a lot. That basically means you're going to win it every time.
Yeah, just like 2011, right?
Sorry, go on. You were talking about the teams that they would face if they won the conference.
Yeah, so with that in mind, every point, every game matters a ton. So you can't take any game lightly. You can't look at the schedule and go, oh, it's just Chicago, because that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs do year in, year out in the regular season, which hurts their standings position. And then they complain about having to play a team like Tampa or Boston every year in the first round. It's like, well, finish higher in the standings, right?
Don't get Ridley Gregged.
Because they would, sorry, I didn't make the point. They'd lose to these bottom feeders. I don't know if you noticed, Toronto always lays an egg against like the Buffaloes.
The Canucks, the past like 10 years.
I know,
the Benning Canucks always took down the Leafs. It was awesome. It was the funniest thing.
So yeah, I'm curious to see what the coaching staff does there in terms of Woo and Friedman.
It'll certainly be interesting and situation that we will follow. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, we got to get Betway, but I want to get at least one to anyone else in. This one from Karan. Where'd it go? Okay, I can't find it, but he was asking about power play movement, and that the power play seems like it hasn't been moving around a lot. Not a lot of player rotation, which is something we saw a lot of, it felt like, earlier in the season.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't consciously thought about it, but now that it's been brought up, yeah, it isn't moving nearly as much as it was at the start of the season. Maybe that's a case of Icelandoma is trying to get comfortable, and you don't want to make things too complicated, but also given the number of shorthanded goals, maybe it is just a point of let's just simplify the man advantage a little bit. If you introduce a lot of movement, it's a more complex set. It requires more reads. If you have any cross ups or any confusion, you don't want to be turning pucks over. Yep. I wonder if that's part of it, but that's a really good observation. There hasn't been quite as much movement as we saw early in the season.
We missed it earlier in the show. People were mad at you. People were saying Wallman is a good player who needs to get grigged. I think the Canucks will do something about it.
No, he doesn't. Come on, guys.
I love it.
I also, by the way, I love Ridley Gregg loading up for that slapper.
His name's Greg. Why? Okay, honestly, I'm not advocating for players to get hurt. But if anyone really deserves it, why are you spelling your name like that? Just throwing that out there.
I have so much time for him as a player. Yeah, I watched him early in the season. I did a national piece on under the radar rookies, and this guy is such a pain in the rear. He drove Kucherov nuts.
Yeah, he's like an upcoming pest in the league.
But he's also got skill.
Yeah.
He's got good hands.
28th overall pick in the 2020 draft.
He can play center. He can play wing. Oh, I'm telling you, he is such a fan favorite type of player. so DeBrincat obviously left Ottawa, didn't want to resign there. In their first game back, he rocked DeBrincat. He's that type of guy. He got under Tom Wilson's skin. It was like this
That's sick.
like, and all of this was in October. Within the first 7 games, he went off before getting hurt. And he's a wrecking ball in the forecheck. This guy, he's so much fun. And I love him rubbing it in the Leafs' faces there. I also love the Ottawa fans with the pay your taxes chant.
Oh,
For
I called
God
it.
Tavares.
I called it. That was so much fun. That was great. The pay your taxes.
But this is good for hockey.
It
I
is.
think
Absolutely
If,
it
like
is.
you have some emotion. Yeah, I had no problem with the clapper. I wouldn't have had a problem with Rielly going after Greg. But then he cross-checked him in the head, which is going way too far.
Yeah,
deserves a lot of lengthy suspension.
Yeah.
But if Rielly went over and like gave him a shot or like tried to fight him, I wouldn't have had a problem with that either.
Or even said like, "Hey, next time we see you guys," and the NHL schedule is so stupid, they're probably not going to see each other until like next season. Next time we see you guys, we're going to remember that. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like what JT Miller said to Wallman when he was grittying.
Well, the NHL is better when there's hate.
Oh, totally.
When there's animosity, when there's heroes, when there are villains.
Yeah.
I mean, even lately, the Canucks games have been chippy, and it's been fun. It's been entertaining.
We should know quickly too, like the people upset about, oh, he's doing the gritty dance. The people upset about the slap shot. If your team, the roles are reversed, you're gonna have no problem with it. Some might, but that's just tribalism of sports fans. Like if you switch the teams around, you're not going to hear the outrage will be different, right? Everyone wants to support when their players do something. Oh, it's fun. It's good for the game. But the second, the other team does it, especially in like Battle of Ontario, Battle of Alberta, sports are tribal at the end of the day. People gravitate to what they want to cheer for. So
I'm disappointed.
Try to leave your biases at the door.
I'm disappointed at how many people are just fine with Wallman grittying on them.
Really? You have a problem with that?
No, I don't. I just think it's way funnier to have a problem with it. Like, I don't care.
Here's
But
the thing. If you're upset by that, don't let him have the chance to take the penalty shot.
totally. So,
Right?
boom.
Don't have Ridley Gregg have a chance to wind up with an open net and an empty net. Change the outcome beforehand.
I mean, yeah, but you can't always do that, right?
Well, it's like, in baseball quads, and here we go. Pitchers arguing that a guy threw the bat flip and he's all pissed off. Make a better pitch. Don't allow
totally.
a guy to take you deep, right?
Sure. But it's also hilarious when the guy gets plunked the next at bat.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
that's the whole code. And
Yeah. This one, I
We've
like this from Pimp
discussed
Pants
that.
Strong. I agree with this one. I don't think people get it. I have no problem with the player stunting. They just need to be ready for the response. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. But also, come on, it's a goal celebration.
Yeah, no.
It's
Wallman is
Wallman's
different.
thing-
Wallman
yeah,
is
yes,
different.
yeah,
Wallman
yeah.
is different. I'm saying with Greg,
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
look, also, I love it from Greg because I'm also looking at it from the perspective of, okay, they're in Ottawa, home ice. He is looking up at an empty Maple Leafs goal, probably seeing a bunch of Maple Leaf sweaters
Yep.
behind that goal. If he also way funnier would have been if he reversed Stefan'd it and like clapped it and hit the crossbar or something, and then they go the other way and score. That would have been great.
Excuse me, you Leafs fan? Quads?
Oh, no. I am a fan. I was explaining this to people at the Super Bowl yesterday. I am a fan of the funniest outcome possible.
chaos.
always.
We want chaos.
Always.
I like this chaos better than your
Yeah.
scenario of him hitting the crossbar and the Leafs coming back.
I think it would have been funny. Like it would have been
I think
hilarious.
this is hilarious too.
Dude, people still laugh at Patrick Stefan for like the crappy
yeah,
Edmonton
but I
ice.
like Ridley Gregg. You have to remember, he's one of my guys.
That's fine. I like Patrick Stefan. That's my boy.
Let's be honest. The Battle of Ontario has needed some
Oh,
of this
yeah.
flair.
Yeah, because the Senators keel over and die by November every year after their fans all
they
actually talk about how great they're going to
I
be.
know.
They beat the Leafs in the season series for the first time in like 5 or 6 years.
That's great. They're still not going to make the playoffs. The Canucks
Fair
beat the
enough.
Leafs in the playoff
Fair
in the
enough,
season
but
series every year.
Here's something for fans of that team to look forward to now that, let's be honest, for years when the Darcy Tucker, Chris Neal era, like that's when hockey was at its peak entertainment value. I'm not saying it's bad now, but it's so much better when you have two teams that hate each other, when you have two fan bases that hate each other, and you get all these Maple Leafs fans coming out to Ottawa, and Ridley Gregg can take this huge clapper and stick it to all those Leafs fans in attendance. Get his own team fired up. Like, Ottawa is out of it, as you mentioned, but there's still got to be something for their fans to get behind.
Here's a piece of trivia. Grady made me think of it. Chris Neil, okay, name Grady brought up, has his number retired by the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
He played 1,026 games in the NHL. How many points, not goals or assists, listeners at home, play along. How many points? Don't look it up.
I'm not.
Don't look it up. How many points does Chris Neil have in his NHL career, worthy of getting his jersey retired by the Ottawa Senators, who he played all 1,026 NHL games with?
258?
That was insanely close. 250, even less than your low guess.
I was going 270.
Yeah, 250. But obviously that wasn't his game. He just shouldn't have had his jersey retired. You got to have some sort of standard for jersey retirements. All right, this is great. I love this. Karan, I like Patrick Stephon. That's my boy. 2024. All right, let's
your all boys team. What would your all boys team be?
Noah Juleson on the back end. Archer Seelov's holding it down in the crease.
Eriksson,
Derek Dorsett. I really love Derek Dorsett.
Lindholm's been your guy for so long.
Lindholm?
Yeah.
Oh, Lindholm for sure. Vetrano. Who else?
Eriksson Ek.
Yeah. The all boys.
Clay
team.
Stevenson.
Oh my God.
Man, you got Seelovs and Clay
Shohei Ohtani.
Nice AHL team you got there, Quads.
Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez.
All
right. Let's get to our Betway Bet of the day. Brought to you by our friends over at Betway. That's right, folks. Baseball season is upon us, and I'm picking Julio Rodriguez. I'm just kidding. Our Betway Bet of the day is hockey related. Pull it up, Grady. Calgary Flames to win. Flames have been playing some good hockey lately, and Kuzmenko said they're going to the playoffs. A $10 bet to beat the New York Rangers on the money line, a plus 135 bet, $10. Returns you $23.50 over at Betway. Must be 90 plus play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly.
By the way, I just have to say, all those people on Twitter, as soon as the Super Bowl ended, like within 5 minutes, being like, baseball season has arrived.
I didn't even see that.
Relax. The Fox
Quads
on
is
MLB
burners.
account had this viral tweet right away.
Really?
As soon as it ended,
Oh,
I'm
they
like,
do that every year. Yeah. It's all coming
dude,
back to
like,
me.
just can we at least give it like an hour?
Absolutely not. Shohei Ohtani season, baby.
Like I'm on Twitter trying to see what people are saying about the Super Bowl because I'd watched it, but I'm not a football fan, so I'm curious what people's takes are. And I just see a bunch of baseball season has officially started. And I'm like, Quads, you must be one of those people.
It's coming. Yeah, I texted into Fox. Tweet it out, baby. All right.
By the way, quickly, I'm calling it right now. Calgary Flames, Vancouver Canucks, first round of the playoffs. They're meeting.
Spicy. That's good for the game.
Kuzmenko, overtime winner to send the Canucks home.
Yeah.
Ooh, could you imagine?
And then Wallman Gritty's in the Stanley Cup final.
Detroit.
All right, we'll close it out there for my co-host Harmon Dial and our technical producer Grady Sass. My name is Dave Guidrelli. Thank you so much for listening to an episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads brought to you by the Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X's fresh look is just an added bonus to its range since you can drive up to 406 kilometers on a single charge. That's enough to get you from Kitsilano to Whistler or Kamloops to Kelowna and back and still be home in time for the game. Now that's what we'd call electric. The best part, by choosing electric, you can get up to $11,000 in rebates and incentives. The BZ4X are in stock and selling quickly, so make sure to visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer to get your hands on one.